All right, welcome to episode 2 of DEC Does What. I'm your host, Sean Mahar, along with
Erica Ringwald. Hey, everybody.
We're back at it again here at Team DEC. We've got a lot of great stories to tell you about and a really cool interview coming up on Arbor Day. But first, our first episode was on the eclipse, and I had the awesome opportunity of being in the path of totality, Erica. And let me tell you,
what was that like, Sean?
It was awesome. It was exactly what Dr. Angie told us about. Everything that she said really came true. Actually even heard a coyote howl as the lights went down.
No way.
It was wild. It was so cool. And we want to hear from your tales of totality if you have them. And please feel free to contact us at contact@dec.ny.gov and share any eclipse stories that you may have. But Erica, what was your eclipse like?
I watched the eclipse from the roof of the parking lot here at 625 Broadway in Albany. And while it was impressive, it was not, in fact, mind-blowing. So,
well, I'm impressed that you were here keeping us in our jobs.
I actually left my desk. Okay.
Excellent. Glad you were able to do that, Erica. Well, I left my desk the other week. I was on vacation, and you were holding down the fort, and I know there was a lot of news stories that were flying, and one of them being, I guess we discovered some hidden underground barrels on Long Island. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so DEC has been directing the responsible party of a cleanup at Bethpage Community Park. That's in the town of Oyster Bay on Long Island. This cleanup has been underway for quite some time. It's, they're looking at sites used by Grumman and U.S. Navy, the U.S. Navy actually, where there were historic industrial activities at this location, and we've been cleaning that up for a while. And recently, the contractors working for the responsible party found 6 55-gallon drums buried in cement underground. So that's not super unusual in a complicated cleanup like this one, because there's a lot of different pieces of property.
But probably not something you want to find.
No, not necessarily, no. So while it's not super surprising to find drums buried on a property, the fact that these were encased is kind of unusual, at least it is to our engineer experts here in the Division of Environmental Remediation. However, the upside of being encased is that there was no release of the contents of the drums to the environment. So as a result of that, we've been working really closely with the town of Oyster Bay, and the governor put out an announcement. She directed us to work with Northrop Grumman, the responsible party, to perform an enhanced cleanup at this site. That's going to include a couple of key pieces, one of which all of the soil that is part of the cleanup is not going to be reused at the site. It's going to be taken to an appropriate facility for disposal off-site, all off Long Island. The other, there's going to be enhanced cleanup in certain parts of the site. And we're going to be working with Northrop Grumman to build back the baseball field. The town has not been able to use this ball field for more than 20 years. It's really a community asset, and we want to bring it back bigger and better.
That's part of what we do here at DEC when we talk about environmental cleanups. It's not just about cleaning up the toxic things that you find underground, but the restoration is such a key component. So you'll have to keep us updated on that in the coming weeks as we continue that investigation work on the ground. But
absolutely.
Internally, Erica, I know you were helpful in a major announcement that we put out recently regarding our first ever Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights that we've created here in DEC. But what went into that, and what's this new office going to be working on?
So Commissioner Sagos has really put increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion both among DEC staff at the agency, but also doing a better job of working with the communities that we serve, enhancing those efforts. And part of that is establishing our first ever Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights. We're going to have our first ever Chief Diversity Officer at the agency. And this will help really organize those efforts for better outreach to all of the communities we serve. So that's pretty exciting for us. And it's quite a legacy for the commissioner.
Definitely. So, Erica, you have mentioned the commissioner and Commissioner Segos, but I think the biggest news of the week is
I don't want to talk about it.
me neither, but we have to, and that is Commissioner Segos is unfortunately leaving the agency as commissioner. It's been, 8.5+ years now of him at the helm here. You and I both came up under him.
Yep.
Really helped him achieve a lot of what he's achieved, and, well, now we got to run the ship, I guess, while he's out.
Well, speaking of that, I believe you have a new title, Sean.
I believe I do, I guess. I'm the interim commissioner for the agency. It's a great honor to have this role and help lead the agency through this time of transition and wait and see what happens next on the search for a new commissioner. If anyone out there would like to apply, please.
Trust me, folks, and Commissioner Segos agrees with me. There's no one better than Sean to guide us through this transition.
Well, Erica, I couldn't do it without you, and that is the God-honest truth. So Arbor Day is coming up, and we are on a mission to plant 25 million trees by 2033 in the state. And today we're going to be sitting down with two of DEC's foresters here, Bryan Ellis and Jason Drobnack, to learn more about that and what exactly a DEC forester is. And I promise you this, it will not be an arbitrary conversation. All right, welcome back to DEC Does What. We're joined today by Bryan Ellis and Jason Drobnack from our Division of Lands and Forests here at DEC. And we're going to learn a little bit more about what foresters do for the department. But first, we're on a 25 million tree planting goal that the governor has set for us. And we have a lot of trees that we have to plant across the state. And, we're excited to hear from these two about why this is important overall. I mean, when you look out the window here in New York, you see a lot of trees. So I'm really curious as to why we need to plant more trees in the state overall.
And I think specifically, since the goal is 25 million trees by 2033, which seems far away, but it's right around the corner because that's a lot of work, right? What is the role of planting these trees in our efforts to mitigate climate change?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And to think about that, I like to think about the history of New York's forests in New York. And we were a really agricultural state over 100 years ago, and a lot of our forest area were cleared for agricultural land. And over the last 100 years, we've increased our forest area from the 25% that it was at the turn of the century to now 62% of our land area is forest today. And the unfortunate thing is we've seen kind of a reversal of that increase in forest area across our state. And we've seen in the last 10 years a decrease in our forests. And forests play a really important role. They provide us with a lot of different benefits from, habitat for wildlife, carbon sequestration, like you mentioned, as we think about climate change and the importance of forests. Our forests in New York are continuing to decrease in the amount of carbon they're sequestering as they age and we lose forests. So, planting 25 million trees is a really big step forward in us kind of starting to reverse that trend in New York and increase the sequestration within our New York forests.
So for those listeners who don't know what carbon sequestration means, trees and forests are among the Earth's very best carbon reduction systems and critical to our fight against climate change. As a tree grows, it stores more of the carbon in our environment.
So where are we going to be planting these trees, Jason?
Well, I just wanted to add to what Bryan said, too, which was that we also are going to be planting trees in our community and urban areas to help mitigate the impacts of climate change in those areas. Extreme heat is an issue for climate change, and that's something that we are focused on as well.
I know we have a very robust extreme heat action planning process going on now, multi-agencies, and looking at those urban heat islands and how to mitigate them are really important. Appreciate that. So, when it comes to these trees, I mean, where are we getting the seed stock from, or where are we getting the seedlings from? And do we at DEC have a role to play in that?
Yes. So part of the governor's announcement was to rehab our nursery to help, get better capacity for the whole state to help with all the planting efforts in communities and rural areas. And I guess the other thing would be the seed strategy. We are actually formulating a reforestation plan right now and talking with several partners, like everybody that has ever planted trees we're talking to right now to help with seed strategy, outplanting, landowner outreach, all those different types of things that we need to do as the state of New York, because we want to get as many stakeholders as possible to help us in that effort. We're going to need as much help as we can get.
Who are some of those partners?
Some of the partners could be, the universities, any of the universities, Cornell, ESF, SUNY ESF. Also, organizations focused on tree planting out there, landowners themselves. You could also, right now, we're talking to folks that are experts in seed sourcing. Because that's a big issue. So before you put trees in beds in the nursery, you have to find the seed, and that's a real issue in New York. So we're talking to folks that are focused on those areas right now.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, obviously private landowners are really key to this. And Bryan, I heard you talk about your role as a regional forester, really working individually with those large landowners. Talk a little bit about what that work is like and why are, average everyday people like this so important to our efforts?
Yeah, well, that's a really good point, Sean. And when people think about New York forests, they tend to be drawn towards the Adirondacks or some of these areas where we have large forest areas. But really the majority of forests in New York are owned by family forest owners. And so when really we're thinking about really affecting a large portion of New York forests, we are automatically drawn to that those private forest landowners who are working on their lands. So those folks, need expertise. They need technical expertise. They need assistance in terms of, what they should be doing on their land and helping them manage their land properly, because these techniques are not always free. And, we need to provide them with the tools that they would need to reforest their land or to improve the health and resiliency of those forests on their properties. So, like our staff in Region 5 are continually going out and meeting with landowners, walking their woods with them to talk to them about, what they see, their forest cover, any invasive issues that they might have, and then helping develop a plan and a strategy for managing their woods responsibly.
What kind of trees are we going to be planting?
Well, in some ways, that's what the reforestation plan is doing. It's helping us develop a species list, thinking about like what trees would be appropriate for what areas, what would be the most successful. I think that's an important aspect to this. What's really going to survive, and how is our planting success going to be? We want to have the most planted success we can. Tree planting generally is an expensive endeavor, and it's a lot of work. So anything we put in the ground, we want it to be able to last for a long time.
What are some of the biggest threats facing our forests today in the state outside of climate change, which we've heard a little bit about today?
Yeah, there's a lot of threats to our forests in New York. I think invasive species can be one thing that's right on top of people's minds. We've seen the spread of emerald ash borer across our forests in New York and the loss of that species. Hemlock woolly adelgid is another invasive species that's really affecting, and that one is sort of magnified by climate change. As we are having warmer winters, we're seeing less die-off of that invasive species over time, and so spread northward of hemlock woolly adelgid into some of the most dense hemlock forests in the country, actually, in the Lake George area right now. And so that's a big threat. But we're also seeing, changes in seasonality, increased windstorms, and other damage that's going to happen to our forests. And then, development and, a loss of forest to development, I think is a real challenge that we're going to be seeing here moving forward.
So what are some of the steps that we take to combat some of those threats? Obviously invasives, we've got a lot of work underway, but what are some of the other steps that you're taking on the Division Lands and Forest?
Well, one of the things that we've done in the last few years to help with forest resilience is the Regenerate New York cost share program for landowners to help with establishing forest regeneration, basically to help with making sure that the stands are coming back after a disturbance, whether it's a windstorm like Bryan was saying, or a timber harvest, or any of those different things that could happen. And we're going to have more of that stuff. So that's one of the things we've been doing. We also have been, having our forest health folks do some control efforts with hemlock woolly adelgid. One of the other things that we do on a regular basis, and we've done for a long time, is our forest stewardship program, which is just a resource assessment for private landowners. It's a free walkthrough, just to get professional forestry eyes on a forest. Because what we want to do is be able to see those things before they become a real big problem and mitigate it through professional forest management.
Jason, if a homeowner wanted to follow up with you to learn more about that, what's the best way to get information about the program or schedule a visit?
You could there's a couple ways you could do it. You could go through your regional office for whatever county you're in. That would be one way. Or you could just go to our website. Our DEC website has the private forest stewardship program, and that will have the information that you need to connect with a forester in your region.
That's dec.ny.gov.
So branching off from this conversation today and going a little bit more into the people behind this, and I'd love to hear more about your, how you came to sow your roots here in DEC. But before we do that, Bryan, I was struck by a little factoid you included on your resume here, and that is you are a game of logging chainsaw certified individual. I feel very renowned to be in your presence, but is this a conflict with your professional work? You being a chainsaw operator and logging championship, and here we're talking about planting more trees in New York. Is there an issue there that you see?
Well, game of logging is a really important training that we provide to loggers and landowners. It's through our
train logger
certification, and it's to help safety in the woods. So it's to help our industry who's working in the woods to operate more safely, try to get, better chainsaw practices out there. So, we train a lot of our DEC staff in it because we use chainsaws as in our everyday work. When we're going out on a road, if a tree falls down or there's a hazard tree somewhere, that's something that we manage. And so that certification, means I've gone through some training and I have, some techniques that I can use to safely take down trees. But to get after some of your other parts of that question is, sometimes, forests need some management in order to make that forest more resilient so it can better resist windstorms or other damage. One program that I've worked on in my career in DEC was the Southern Pine Beetle program. And, we have pine barrens, and those barrens have gotten overcrowded by the lack of forest fires in those ecosystems. Those trees are then stressed, and they've left them ripe for invasive species and the southern pine beetle to kill a lot of trees. And so, we cut down a lot of trees to thin out those forests, increase the resilience of those forests, and restore that ecosystem. And that's, an important strategy that we have sometimes to improve the health of our forests, is to actually do some management on them and remove some trees.
So you're both foresters. What is the thing that people really don't understand about what you do?
That it's a people business, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the first thing that came to mind in that question, is that we do a lot of people management too. Like we want to answer your questions and be a resource for landowners or the public or anybody really on forests. We care about forests in a lot of different ways. Is the other answer I would say, is we care about sustainable timber production while we also care about the forest preserve. So we wear a bunch of different hats. We're sort of a big tent, I guess I would say. We take all covers.
It's another example of how community engagement is so critical to nearly everything we do here at DEC.
Yeah, it's really a way to help people see the forest through the trees. So I may be barking up the wrong tree here, you two, but it seems like you two know each other, work really well together, have been out in the forest together for a while now. I mean, is that true? Like, how did you two come to meet, and how did you two come to be working for DEC?
Well, we started, I started in Stanford in Region 4 in 2008. I was a private land forester, and then I moved over to state lands and private forestry. And then Bryan came a little later as the forest preserve manager, and that's when I really appreciated him, and I tried to buy him a lot of beers for managing the forest preserve. He was the only forest preserve manager for the Catskills.
Can we pause there for a second? When you say forest preserve, what is the forest preserve? Because I'm not sure all listeners here know what that means.
you could do that one.
Yeah, so the Forest Preserve, we have a Catskill Forest Preserve and an Adirondack, and those are constitutionally protected lands that are managed as forever wild within those two areas of the state. It's a really special resource for New York. New York has the most state-owned land of any state, and those two resources are highly recreated on, and provide really great forest cover in those areas.
And Bryan did a really good job in managing the forest preserve when he was there, and we had a lot of interaction because the other side, he'll probably talk about this, is he did have some experience in college looking at private forestry, and that's probably what I considered, my favorite thing was to visit forest landowners in the field. I came to DC after a really long journey. So I had graduated forestry school a little later in life, and then worked for the health department doing Lyme disease ecology research. Actually published a couple papers and did some stuff. Did West Nile virus as well. Worked over at Griffin Lab in the center ones for 7.5 years, and then they said, well, the money's going out to California because the bug's going out to California. You might want to start thinking about going somewhere else. So 6 interviews later, I got hired as the watershed, New York City watershed forester liaison. So that was an interesting job, also a policy bent to it. But then I did private forestry too, and then I came here in 2018.
Well, we're glad you got planted here with us. And Bryan, how did you come to be with DC?
Yeah, my story is a little different, but it also took me a little bit of time to get here. And, growing up, my neighbor and best friend's dad was a DEC forester and supervisor in the Potsdam DEC office. And so that kind of opened my eyes up to this career path. But it took me a little longer to find it. I ended up going to school for general environmental studies, and after taking some time in Colorado after school, working for a conservation department out west, I saw the damage of mountain pine beetle on the forests out there, and wanted to go back for forestry and come back to New York. And that's when I went to school for forestry at ESF, and eventually found my way to DEC, first as a forest technician, working in central office, and then eventually got my permanent job in the Stanford office with Jason as a forester, doing, as you had said, the forest preserve, but also working with private landowners. And that had been my focus at grad school, was how private forest landowners manage their land and why they manage their land the way they do. So it's always been a passion of mine to work with people and help landowners kind of meet their objectives on their land, while also helping them, be, environmentally sound in what they're doing.
So what are some of the do's and don'ts of working with private landowners?
As far as managing their land goes?
Yeah.
So typically my advice to forest landowners was first to get a professional to help manage those lands, unless they were a professional themselves, which happened also. But that was always the first piece of advice, is if somebody knocks on your door and is looking to harvest your woods, a professional forest can help you know what the value is and know how to do that job in a neat and professional manner. And that's my first piece of advice, and it's one of the major things in our program, is to get more people to hire professionals. Like we said, it was like 20%. Only 20% of landowners hire a professional forester to have a harvest in New York State, and it's a big issue if we're going to do carbon and all those other things that we're talking about at this point.
So it's Arbor Day here in New York State in a few days, and we're happy to be having you join our Arbor Day episode here. But where's your favorite place to visit on Arbor Day in this state?
So when I was, most private land forests, we have 30 private land foresters in the regions. They also double duty as urban foresters as well. And Arbor Day is like the forester holiday, right? So my favorite spot was in Sydney, New York, which is, Delaware County, and every year, I think there must be getting close to 30 years as a tree city, which is one of our programs that we do in urban forestry.
Fantastic.
And the best time I ever had was the first time I went, and they're like, you have to do a speech about Teddy Roosevelt. Like, that's what they did. I didn't realize
No pressure.
We're underneath the pavilion. It starts to rain. There's a band there. The kids.
Do you have to dress up like TR too?
That.
No, I didn't have to. I just had my DEC stuff on. So
good.
So which was good. I had we just did that, and we always went there every year for Arbor Day, and they would invite the school band to come. I think it was the junior high would come, and they would play a song, and they would sing a tree song of some sort. And for like 5 years, I gave the same speech because they always wanted a Teddy Roosevelt speech. But they were really great, and I still like, because I live down that way, I still like to kind of swing by and make sure the trees are all right in Sydney.
That's awesome. So Bryan, on Arbor Day, do you hug a tree?
I usually do.
And is it okay to hug trees?
I think it is. Yeah, I think trees appreciate it, right? But on my Arbor Day and Arbor Days, usually I try to get outside somewhere. I don't think I have a specific location that I go to. But I think what is really important to me is trying to get my daughter outside and in the woods.
Amen.
And try to foster, her appreciation for the environment at a young age. And so, I'm always trying to take her to a different kind of forest and kind of show her around and show her the different things that I see in the forest when we're out there. And that's, something that I always try to think about and be conscious of on Arbor Day.
Do you have a favorite book about trees that you've read to your daughter?
Yeah, well, she's 5, so she's not reading them yet, and I read a lot of books to her. But, there are some children's books that I do like, and that have always been kind of close to me that involve trees. The Lorax is one, obviously, that is drawn to our profession, and I think talks about a lot of important points of forest management and responsible forest management and thinking about natural resources. And the Giving Tree is another one that, is really close to my heart, in that, the trees just give us so much over their lives. And I think there's just a really kind message in that book as well.
Well, we've been joined today by Bryan Ellis and Jason Drobnack from our division Lands and Forests. And Bryan and Jason, it's been great to have you on the second episode of DEC Does What. Unfortunately, though, we have made it to the point where we're going to have to make like a tree and leave this conversation today. So thanks for joining us once again. It's been great to have you on, and we'll have you get back to work planting all these 25 million trees across the state.
And we'll have you come back in 2033 to let us know if we've met our 25 million tree goal.
Thanks, and we appreciate doing this, and we look forward to doing some more if we get a chance.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks. Well, episode 2 in the books, Erica. We got 2 down, and, well, as many more to go as we can. I'm excited for it.
My goal for next time is we're going to double the number of listeners from 5 to 10.
Awesome. And I'll double the number of dad jokes from 20 to 40.
Looking forward to it.
I bet you are. Well, this has been a great episode, and stay tuned next week. Earth Week is coming up, and we're going to have some cool guests on to talk about what you can do in your backyard to help make Earth Day every day.
So visit us if you want to learn more about DEC at dec.ny.gov and get outside.
DEC Does What is a production of DEC's Division of Communication, Education, and Engagement. Theme music is by Mike Menza. Like what you heard on this episode? Please leave a review or share this episode with others. Want to learn more about DEC's wide-ranging efforts to protect New Yorkers and the environment? Visit dec.ny.gov or connect with us on social media. You can find us using @NYSDEC. For more information on DEC Does What, visit dec.ny.gov/podcast.